Hi, everyone. This is Bear from the Odinic School of Mysteries podcast. I want to say thanks for joining me. So, we had a demon in our house last night. That was kind of exciting. It was the whole works. The animals were hiding under the furniture, and the cats were hissing at nothing, and the dog was growling and barking at the cats, and the kids were freaking out. And my wife was afraid to go in the bedroom. I mean, it was a spooky thing, and the reason, and it's for these reasons that people think demons are more powerful than they are. The and so I wanted to. This is just kind of going to be just a little short one-off thing, but I think we needed to talk about this for a minute, because it's important. So. Demons are often confused with the same word as daemon, even though they do technically come from the same Greek word. They don't mean the same things. So in shamanism, this is where I come up through most of this stuff. Shamanism, it's known. You can almost call them aspect spirits. Aspect spirits. What does that mean? An aspect spirit is a spirit who feeds off of a very specific type of emotion. So that's why I don't know how many of you have actually watched these, but like you could go on YouTube and watch demon possession videos and that kind of stuff. And most of those are fake anyway. But one of the things we notice pretty quickly is that demons usually have two names. Fear and envy, or hate and lust, or something like that. And those are typically the names that typically the emotions that they eat. And so when they come into a house, they want to create those emotions in the household. Right? They're actually not very common. They're not very common. But they're really scary, right? They're very malicious. They hate you with everything that they have. In our case, we had some friends come over, and they live in a kind of we'll just say, frankly, a very creepy building. They have all kinds of problems in that building. And we're pretty sure that it followed them from their house to our house, because it all started while they were here at our house. So the things, and this is really kind of the crux of it. We don't have to get too much into the weeds here. Demons are scary because they feel scary, but they're one of the most easiest entities to get rid of. And it all boils down to about 2 or 3 laws. You have the law of consent. You have the law of property rights. And you also have the law of governance. And as I'm saying these, I should probably write these down so I remember to cover these in other videos. So, property rights. What was the other 2 I said? Property rights, governance, and consent. I've actually already done, I don't know if it's on the podcasts yet, but I've already done a video or a show on consent. So maybe I'll upload that to the podcast so people can listen to it. Or maybe I'll do a new one. I don't know. Anyway, it all boils down to really these three laws. So usually the first thing you do is you smudge the house really good. You go get yourself some sage or some sandalwood, and it changes the charge on the molecules in the air. Is really all it does. It's not the magical cure-all that Hollywood would make you think. But it changes, it kind of purifies the air a little bit, kind of cleans it up, so you can actually do what you need to do. And then if you understand these 3 laws, you could get rid of anything. Absolutely anything that's in your house. All right, so the law of property rights goes like this. The person who's there first makes the rules. That's essentially what property rights is. These laws are ubiquitous, and they cover everything in the spiritual world. He who comes first makes the rules. So that means, as far as hierarchies go, the thing that was in your house the longest, the first to come into the house, is the person who's essentially in charge of the environment. Okay, that's why if you go to a really old house with something that's already in it, it's a lot more difficult to get rid of because of this law that's there. That spirit was already there. It has the right of property. So if you are the first person in the house and then something comes along later, you could just kick it out. It's really that simple. You're the boss. But what happens is, and the problem that people get into is they don't realize, well, that's what they say, you got to know your rights. And it's the same thing here. If you don't know your rights, you're going to get pushed around and your family is going to be terrorized by a frankly very weak spirit. Because really, I mean it. Demons are scary because they feel scary, but they're not as dangerous as people crack them up to be. All right, because Hollywood, a lot of that has to do with Hollywood, and frankly, people talking out of their ass. They don't really know what they're talking about. The law of governance. The law of governance states there are hierarchies in the spiritual world. And if you call something that's bigger than the spirit into your home, the spirit has to submit to that higher authority. Right? Sometimes that authority is you, sometimes it's something else, which is why when people call on the name of Jesus, for example, that works. It's because you're calling on something bigger to take care of something smaller. But you can do this with just about any god, really. Last night I used Odin, and it worked just fine. And that's the law. That's called the law of governance. That there's hierarchies, and if you call upon something that's bigger than the spirit that's in your house or you're trying to get rid of, it has to obey and leave. And then finally, the law of consent, and this is the best for last because this is really the most important one. And as far as laws go, in hierarchies, this is one of the most important ones that everyone always kind of seems to forget about. Absolutely nothing can be done to you or your family without consent. It cannot be done. Okay. But here's the tricky bit. There are ways around that law. There are ways around the law of consent. And so the ways people get into it, get around it, spirits get around it, is really the quickest way is just to trick someone into offering consent, which is kind of what happened last night. Well, I have to be kind of careful because it sounds like they played a game or something. So the way it works is like this. We have some friends come over. They're going to drop over. My son turned 3 back in August, and they didn't make his birthday party, so they came over to drop off some gifts. It's pretty simple, pretty standard, having friends over kind of affair. But they live in a really creepy building. And what happens, which is very common, is something will just hitch a ride. Right? They just hitch a ride onto a person, and then you just carry it home with you. And if the person doesn't know their rights, they're not grounded enough or whatever, it's very easy for the spirit to latch on. It's just super easy. That's why one of the most common reasons people end up with haunted houses is because, their teenagers or whatever will go tromp around some abandoned building, ghost hunting, This happens all the time. They go ghost hunting somewhere because they see it on TV. Something attaches itself to them, and then they just carry it home. And that's the easiest way to get around it, because at that point you don't even really have to offer consent. The consent has already been given. You are piggybacking in on someone else's invitation. And in this case, I think it was probably they piggybacked on my friends. We offered my friends consent to come in the house, and so the demon, being in their group or so, came in with them. So, the easiest way, and I mean this, the easiest way to get rid of a demon, for those of you who are out there struggling with this shit, and it doesn't matter even if it's a demon or a ghost or a god or whatever, the easiest way to get rid of anything is simply to withdraw consent. That's it. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. There is no rules about when consent can and cannot be drawn. You just simply say, I withdraw consent. You can't be here. And it has to leave. Okay. The best bet is to use all of these 3 rules we just went over. Right. Call on a higher power. Tell the person remind the ghost or the demon or whatever that you are here first and that you're the authority and that you withdraw consent and it has to leave. That'll do it. That'll do it. But you have to be, to be frank, you have to be kind of specific. You have to leave the house. You have to leave my property, because they're tricky little bastards. Right? They'll just oh, I have to leave? All right, I will leave the living room and I'll go live in your bedroom instead. You have to be a lot more specific. But that's really, that's really the crux of it. It's not really a big issue. And like I said again, the reason people are scared of them and they think they're more powerful than they are is because they make a lot of noise. They move stuff around and they flicker the lights and they freak out your animals, and it makes the bedroom spooky at night. If you know your rights, you're fine. If you just remind them that you're protected by gods they are not prepared to deal with, they usually would rather go mess with somebody who doesn't have, who doesn't know the rules and who isn't protected by a god. So, that is that. So that was just, like I said, just a quick one-off. I have I'm recording Wednesday's video after I hang up with this one. So, I love you all. Be safe out there, and don't freak out about stuff that appears freaky on the outside. All right, just because it's scary doesn't mean it's dangerous, but it doesn't mean that it's going to destroy your life or anything, especially if you know what you're doing. Alrighty, bye-bye.